Ramachandra from the NR Hour Sports Show. This is episode 925. I'm joined by a really special guest. Her name is Liz Loza. She's a Yahoo Sports host, and she's an actress also. And most notable movies she's been in is called The Bold and Beautiful, Robot Chicken, My Dragon, and some of the other movies there. And such an inspiration story. And Liz, I just want to say thank you for joining the show. Truly an honor. And like I said, she's big into Yahoo Sports. She works for Yahoo Sports, and they talk about fantasy football all the time. And she has a show with current Chargers running back Austin Ekeler. So we'll get to all of that. And first of all, Liz, like I said, how are you and your family doing today? And happy Friday again.
Oh, thank you. Everybody is good. We're looking forward. We're going pumpkin picking tomorrow. Something that people who have little kids know can often sound a lot more exciting than it is in actuality. But yes, everything was great. Week 7, we're at the bye-pocalypse. Yeah. 6 teams on bye, so a lot of digging through the waiver wire this week, which I actually like because I really enjoy when we're challenged in fantasy. It's so easy when we can play our studs and everyone's healthy. And while that makes for maybe better games to watch, our real fantasy acumen, the chess strategy piece of fantasy comes into play. And then you get stories like Dearness Johnston, who went off for over 100 yards on Thursday night in relief of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And what a great story. Austin Ekeler, by the way, another amazing next man up story. So I really like these opportunities that maybe lesser known players, under the radar guys have an opportunity to take advantage in situations like these.
It's good. It's good that I have you on right now because my team is 1-5. I need your help desperately.
All right, well, let's go.
Yeah, but I want to start off with your childhood growing up, and for you, when did you get interested in sports? Obviously, getting involved in sports and also acting too. So tell our fans about your story growing up.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Chicago. I was always interested in sports. My mom was a single mom. And so my grandfather, who was a World War II vet, very much embodied the feeling of the city of Chicago, worked on the railroad. Just a stormy, husky, and brawling are some of the phrases from the Carl Sandburg poem Untitled Chicago. And my grandpa was very much the embodiment of that spirit. And I was an only child as well. So he was kind of my touch point, the person who would drive me to and from ice skating lessons and ballet lessons and dress me up for Halloween and do all of those sorts of things. And so I learned everything that he had to teach me, which was about sports and changing the oil in a car before computers did it, right? And how to diagnose a faulty belt in a washing machine. So I just grew up loving sports because I loved him so much and I wanted to make him happy, and he taught me about them. And what's not more exhilarating than 4 quarters of football or 2 halves of basketball, or sometimes even all 9 innings of baseball. All 9 gets a little bit tiresome, but I grew up a Cubs fan, so I had some exciting times. I just, growing up, that was always part of my life, and I understood sports and they were part of our daily routine.
Yeah, so before we go any further, everyone please tune in. We are now live on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Spotify. So everyone please tune in. Obviously growing up, who did you look up to as a role model in Chicago? Because Chicago is a big sports town, obviously, and you have a lot of great legends there who played sports in Chicago.
Yeah, I loved Ryan Sandberg. I was actually one year for Halloween. All the other little girls were princesses. And like I said, my grandfather was in charge of those kind of decisions. And I was Ryan Sandberg, who was the second baseman for the Chicago Cubs. So he was probably, you don't grow up in the 90s in Chicago also and not fall in love with Michael Jordan and the 90s Bulls, the Save the Last Dance Bulls, or the Last Dance Bulls. I had a poster of BJ Armstrong on my wall growing up. So I loved BJ Armstrong. I became a brief Raptors fan when he went to Toronto, despite the fact that I've never been to Canada. As for the Bears, I was a little bit too young to catch the 85 Bears, but the stories about the refrigerator Perry and the Super Bowl shuffle. And of course, you don't grow up in Chicago without revering number 34 sweetness, Walter Payton. He was everything. I mean, like he was my grandpa's favorite bear, so he became my favorite bear. So those are different, like different, I think, tiers of time, right? But I would say all three of those teams touched my childhood in profound ways.
Well, yes, I want to ask before we go any further with the sports. I want to ask about your acting career. Tell our fans about your acting career. Obviously, some of your movies you were in, everybody knows that, especially Robert Chicken is the most noticeable one.
Robot Chicken. Yeah, I was
Robot.
I did well the acting career. So like I was always a writer. I always enjoyed writing and English and reading growing up, and I did a high school play. It's like not a particularly exciting story. Like I tried out for a high school play and I got a lead in it and was just taken. It was a play called Becoming Memories. I think I was a sophomore in high school. I got one of the leading roles, and then that was it. I was completely obsessed and addicted with it and wanted to. I think for a long time, I really enjoyed the idea of storytelling. Like I always wanted to be a storyteller, whether it was through my writing or then through acting. And as I've grown older and gotten more life experience and have a broader perspective, I think it's a little trite to hear people be like, I want to be a storyteller. Like, nah. I'm more interested in like parsing narratives now. Like I'm more interested in delving deeper and connecting with people. But I think then the idea of storytelling seemed really like next level. And when I went to college, I double majored and theater was one of my majors. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm 21. I'm going to go out to Los Angeles and I'm going to wait tables and give it a shot. Like I'm going to go try it. And I came to LA with like nothing, like no money. I got a job waiting tables at Maggiano's because I'd grown up in Chicago. So I knew Maggiano's and they were opening one, or they had just opened one in LA. And so that was the restaurant I grew up waiting tables in to make money when I was a teenager. So they knew people, they needed people at the new one. And so I started waiting tables and going on auditions and doing the thing. And then I pounded the pavement really hard. I've always had a lot of hustle. I've never been afraid of hard work. And I've always been super ambitious and wanted more, and started booking jobs. I was on Monk, and then I did a couple episodes of Scandal with Kerry Washington, and I did a couple episodes of 24 with Kiefer Sutherland, and just like one job, I started doing some voiceover, and that's where Robot Chicken and working with Seth Green came into play. And that was an incredible experience. I did a couple of episodes of Robot Chicken and then other animated shows. And I started doing commercials and commercial voiceover work. I did a pilot for ABC. And it was actually at that pilot, I had done a pilot for ABC and it didn't go. And I was heartbroken because I thought this was it. Like this was the official star turn. I'd been working as an actress, making money as an actress, but I was by no means like well off. I still had to have a day job most of the time. It was still like juggling a lot of things, and I was by no means like ready to. I was not famous by any means. But I thought that pilot was going to be the thing that propelled me to the next level. And when it didn't get greenlit, or when it didn't go to series rather, and we had stars in that show, like Tom Arnold was in it, and Judith Light, who's won many Tonys, was a cast member. Rachel Harris was a cast member. I mean, it was like a bunch of names. And when it didn't go, I was really heartbroken. And I had kind of a little bit before that started a blog called The Fantasy Football Girl on the side, just as a way for my own creative outlet. Because when you're working in LA and you're trying to work as an actress or in entertainment, so much of your work is dependent on other people, like whether they like you for the job. You're auditioning, like the audition is the work in many ways. You're auditioning all the time, and that's the work, and then getting the actual job is like the payoff, but you don't get to do the job all the time. So I'd created this side hustle called thefantasyfootballgirl.com, and it was a blog, and I wrote on it, and I did video blogs, remember those? And I started a tiny independent podcast, and I started appearing on Sirius XM shows and other people's independent podcasts. And that all was snowballing at the same time that this pilot did not get picked up. And so it was one of the first moments that I was like, oh, I'm tired of putting other people in charge of my validation and worth. I want to do my own thing. I want more control, and I'm tired of like doing all the things I'm supposed to do and getting this incredible opportunity, and then like the stars don't align, and so I take another step backward. I'm going to focus more energy on the blog, and then that just started to snowball, and eventually I stopped acting because fantasy sports and sports in general became my full-time job. I didn't have time anymore.
That's amazing. Yeah. So I want to ask you, in high school, did you get to like when you work on your sports stuff? So did you get to call games in your high school before going to college? Did you get to like cover any games or write articles in your high school?
So I was on the high school newspaper. I was an editor for 2 years on the high school newspaper. I was editor of the op-ed section and the news section, but I did not write about sports in high school at all. I liked journalism and I liked writing, but I had no interest. Also, like, to be completely honest, like our team wasn't very good, although they got good because Jimmy Garoppolo went to my rival high school. And at that time, my high school was getting good, and he and I like know a couple of people in common. So Jimmy G, who went to Rolling Meadows High School, I went to Prospect. We know people. We know people in common. I've interviewed him a couple of times since then, which was wild. Like to go to the Super Bowl and like see Jimmy G in February of 2020 and be like, "Hey, so and so says hi. What's up, Rolling Meadows? Stand up." Was like, and I've interviewed him subsequently since then. So that's like kind of like hometown hero fun feeling. But as for like the regular high school football beat, I did not do it.
Oh, yeah. So obviously, fast forwarding into your career, you went to Brown University. What did you like about Brown University, and what was the experience like there and the atmosphere there?
Brown was like I was a complete fish out of water. If you want like. Brown is an Ivy League university. Like I said, I always worked super, super hard, and I hustled constantly, and I did not want to stay in the Midwest. I wanted to try to see another part of the country and experience it. And I knew the only way that I would be able to do that was if I got into a good college. That was the only way I'd be able to leave home. And my mom, like I said, was a single mom. So we didn't have a lot of money. In fact, like I hear all these stories about like college guidance counselors or high school guidance counselors getting you into college, like how mine did nothing. There was no guidance. I remember going to my like high school guidance counselor, and he was like, "Okay, so you're going to do 2 years at community college and then 2 years at University of Illinois, and you'll save your mom a lot of money because you're not rich." And I was like, but I was like, what about Stanford? Stanford sounds like a really amazing place. Like, and what about any of these Ivy League schools? Because I kept getting pamphlets, by the way. Like I kept like receiving in the snail mail pamphlets from all these schools, and I'd look through them and they were applications, and I'd be like, well, what about this place? And my guidance counselor was bad. Like, you're just like, no, that's not for you. You'll never get in. That's for rich kids. Us Midwesterners don't get to leave. Like, I remember calling my mom after the meeting with him and sobbing and being like, he says that those places aren't for people like me or us. And my mom was like, well, she was pissed. So what she did was she went to the local bookstore, like the Barnes and Noble, and she found the Princeton Review Guide, best 360 colleges in the US. This was how I got into college. I got that giant fat book. And anytime something came in the mail to me from any university, I would look it up in the book and read about it and see if it was a match or if I was interested in it. And I did not know that you could apply to a college that did not send you an application. I believed, because my high school was what it was, that if a school did not send you an application, you were not allowed, which is the stupidest thing in the world. But Brown sent me an application. So did Northwestern. So did a couple of other good schools. Brown sent me an application, and I read about it in the Princeton Review Guide, and I was like, oh my gosh, this place sounds great. Like, I've never been to Rhode Island. That would be a trip. Who gets to say they've lived in Rhode Island for 4 years? Wow, I've never been there. And the issues on school are like theater and politics. And at the time, those were the things that I was the most interested in, because, I was like an emo 17-year-old. And I applied and I got in. And then so I went, like, and I have to say that when I got there though, like, it was full of rich kids. My high school guidance counselor was not wrong. That it is not for people like me, but it did force me to grow and learn and get out of my comfort zone. And I think the first year I was terrified of everything.
Right.
I was like wearing Birkenstocks and like Lilith Fair t-shirts, and all the other kids were like wearing diesel jeans and fancy shoes that I still can't pronounce. So I was really intimidated, but what it forced me to do was just not care, like know that I was never going to be part of, like, there was a club that I was never going to be invited into. And so I had to find my own way. And I started doing that, and I started to like challenge myself, and I got a degree in linguistics and another degree in theater. And I think when I moved out to LA, there are a lot of kids who like after college feel like, oh my gosh, I can't leave the nest. They're so stifled because their experience has been so soft, frankly, and coddled, and mine was not. And so I was like, oh, LA, waiting tables, going out for auditions, that is no problem. Like, so I will say that the experience was not like, it was a very humbling experience. It was not like this awesome Animal House kumbaya experience at all.
Wow. Hey, all I have to say is you definitely proved your guidance counselor wrong for sure.
Well, thank you. Yeah, twice.
Yeah, so I want to ask you now, obviously your opportunity with Yahoo Sports, when did that come about, and how grateful are you to be in this position right now, being with Yahoo Sports, a big platform for fantasy football and other things? And actually, I had one of your colleagues on the show too, Matt Harmon. He's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And, he was on the show too. And so tell our fans how the process went, and when did the opportunity come about for you?
Yeah, so I mentioned a little bit earlier that I was working on a blog called The Fantasy Football Girl. This is like 10 years ago, right? And I just slowly started working on that, moving away from acting, and all of these other little things started to take over. And I really enjoyed it. Like it was so fun. I didn't start the Fantasy Football Girl, by the way, like trying to be on camera or trying to be in the fantasy space. I was like, this is a hobby that I'm super weirdly passionate about. It seems pretty niche. I don't see a lot of women in the space, despite the fact that the NFL viewing audience is close to 50-50. And I don't see any women in the space at the time working as analysts. They're all sideline reporters. They're all hosts. Like, I actually want to talk X's and O's. I want to talk about player development. I want to talk about which of these rookies that are coming out in the draft are like 5-star recruit or 3-star recruits, and who is like which receivers can ascend at the next level, and what players are quick twitch and blah, blah, blah. And I want to like actually talk analysis, and I don't see any women doing that. And as I said before, like, I was an underdog growing up. I was an underdog in college. I was an underdog when I got to LA, and I was like, well, that's who I am for life. So I'm going to be the first. If no one has done it before me, I'm going to create the blueprint. And I said yes to everybody's anything. Anybody's like crappy little podcast that sounded like it was recorded under the ocean, I said yes to. I just wanted as many reps as possible. And I had learned from my entertainment career that you never know who's watching when. You never know who's listening when. Your next big break could be around the corner, but you can't even see it. So you just got to keep doing it. And if you love it, and if you're enjoying yourself, and if your presentation is organic and authentic, like, that will resonate with a potential audience. And so all of a sudden I did a show on Sirius XM. I did Nando DeFino show on Sirius XM. We talked about RG3 and I got a DM from a guy named Dr. Roto. And he was like, I am working at Scout, which at the time was related to Fox Sports. I'm working at Scout Fantasy, and we're hiring new heads. Can we interview you? Actually, he said, why haven't I heard about you? And I said, well, I don't know why you haven't heard about me. You haven't been listening hard enough. And then he was like, wow, I like that. Can we interview you? And I was like, sure. And so I interviewed, and they hired me. And so Scout Fantasy was my first paid fantasy job. I worked harder than I'd ever worked. It did not pay a lot of money, and they required a ton of content for a very little amount of money. And the churn was real. But I thought, okay, if I do this and I'm getting, like, this is a great place to learn. And then I kept doing it and kept doing it. And I did it for one season, but I like every week, like answered, I made sure all of the content was like delivered, like never sloughed off. And all of a sudden Yahoo Fantasy reached out and they were like, we have been watching you. Your work is awesome and prolific and there's never a lull. You're always posting, you're always creating. We'd love to have you come in for an audition. And so I did, and they gave me the job on the spot. And that was July of 2015. And I have just been with Yahoo Fantasy ever since. The number one, like the most award-winning fantasy platform in the entire space. And this year, I mean, if you talk about gratitude, coming out of 2020 and even 2019, honestly, like 2019 was a hard year for me, both professionally and personally, but 2020 was obviously difficult globally. And then to have Ekeler's Edge with Austin has been an incredible gift. And I feel like a large part of the reason the show works is because Austin is amazing. And because we have good rapport. And because I'm really proud of that show. Like, I think it is one of the things in my career in sports that I am the most proud of because it is unprecedented. Like nowhere in the sports media landscape has an active football player, and not just like an active player like a lineman, but like a star player in the league done a fantasy show. Never has it been done before. This isn't some dusty, crusty, retired player trying to like add some money to his brand and some flash. Like this is Austin flipping Ekeler, the number 2 running back overall in fantasy behind Derrick Henry, week in and week out, going to production meetings with me. We work on this, like we beat together a show. And I think honestly, the part of the reason that the show is so successful and the reason that we vibe so well together is because we are both underdogs who have no problem hustling and who are grateful to be here. And that resonates with audience members. And I don't know, honestly, if he did that show with someone else, if the same vibe would work as well.
No, you two work together well. And like I said, I love what you guys talk about all the time. And hey, I'm just grateful to have both of you on the show now. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's smart too for you, because I have to be honest, when you were like, I didn't know that Matt had been on your show, but when I saw that you were like, hey, I've had Austin on, I was like, oh, I'll do a show if Austin's done a show. And that's like a lot, like for any aspiring podcasters or content creators out there, like that really does help get you guests. Like if somebody else that I am friendly with or I've worked with, like has been vetted, like that you've been vetted by, then I'm like, oh, if Austin's done a show, I'll totally do a show. Right. Or if like Harmon's done a show, then I'll do your show too. And so like that really does help to gain credibility for whoever is creating the content.
Yeah. So speaking of those connections, how important, especially in the sports industry, being a reporter, podcaster, like you just said, or anything in the sports industry, how important is it to make those connections, networking, and then for a young for an up and coming journalist, they need to make a lot more connections. So how important is that in this industry right now?
I mean, I'm not I'm not an NFL reporter. I don't have connections I mean, I do have connections now, but like that's not the space that I didn't go to like University of Missouri to like do that thing, which is, where they all come from, or Syracuse. I didn't go to Syracuse, right? So I think that's one route, but I have always done the contrary thing. Like I've never done the thing that everybody said you're supposed to do. And it's worked out thus far. So I would say like the problem to me with those like big programs, or when you go to like panels where people like give advice to me, I always find them wildly condescending. I feel like nobody talks to you like an actual human being. And I hate them. I don't think they're authentic. I don't think they're real. And I am all about genuine connection, being self-aware, being transparent, owning your stuff. And I will tell you that like, as someone who now in my career gets networked with, you can feel when you're being networked with. Like I can feel when someone is talking to me because they want something from me, not because they're actually interested in anything I have to say. So I would say instead of working on networking and trying to like get as many business cards or numbers in your phone, like be real. And if someone likes you, then they're going to like you. And not everybody is for everybody. And not all the people can be your people. And so, yes, go out there and try to like make meaningful relationships, but not go out there and like try to make meaningful relationships with people that you resonate with and connect with. Don't go out there trying to network, because there are a million people, like soulless, vacant-eyed bots trying to network. And sometimes they get lucky, usually because they have a last name that, you know, means something in the business. And but everyone else, like if you're putting, and that's been my experience, right? Like I put out real content. Sometimes people like it, sometimes people don't. I've been doing it for a decade, and that's what got me here, was being organic and real. And that's the only way I know how to do it. And I can tell you that like the times people have reached, like I had somebody reach out to me and they were like, hey, I'd really like I just graduated from University of whatever, and I'd really love some counsel on how to move forward. Sure, great. I chatted with them. They had like maybe Googled women in sports, and like I came up as one of the first names. They didn't do any research on me. They were like citing things that weren't accurate or true. And I was like, well, I'm like, what are you just like, did you read some article that said like, here's the bullet list, like here are the to-dos when you're like trying to find a job? Because like I'm not interested in helping you if you couldn't bother to read a bio of mine and like think about it before our meeting, you know? Then you just feel networked with, like you feel used. And so I'm not motivated to help you. But there have been people who have reached out and been like, hey, like I love this, and you said this thing 3 weeks ago. And then I'm like, oh, hey, I'll give your resume to someone. So I think just being a human being and not a robot is helpful.
Yeah. So now obviously you guys are the most award-winning fantasy football live on Yahoo Sports, and you got featured in the New York Times and CNN. So what was that like when you got featured, and what did that mean to you?
Well, I was featured in, that was crazy. It was great to be in. I think I've been in the New York Times twice, and maybe CNN twice too. I don't remember, but most recently it was over the pandemic. And the way I got featured, because again, you never know who's watching what or when. A woman who was a writer for a producer for CNN, a writer producer for CNN, like her boyfriend was in, she was tasked with like, the idea was like how is fantasy in particular different in a COVID year with all of these, because remember last year there'd be like games rescheduled and people scrambling to change their lineups, and how has COVID affected the sports industry and to a further extent fantasy. And she was like assigned this article, and it turns out that like her boyfriend was like, oh my God, you got to talk to Liz Loza. I read her sleepers piece every week. Like, and so it was interesting to like the woman who was tasked with assigned this article, like her boyfriend happened to follow me on Twitter and liked my sleepers piece, which was very popular last year because you needed sleepers because you never knew if somebody was going to pop up on the COVID list, if they'd be available. So you're always digging for these under the radar players. And he recommended me, and that's how I ended up on CNN, you know, like the second time. So again, it's just always caring about what you do, putting out quality content and not like phoning it in. And you never know what opportunity is going to pop out of that.
Yeah. So before we get to this season and the fantasy football stuff, I want to talk about your show with Austin Ekeler. And whoever doesn't know about that show, please go follow that show. They do a great job every week, especially Austin Ekeler being able to have time to do this show, especially trying to focus on the season at the same time by doing great things with you. So what's that been like for you, both of you, and having your own fantasy teams? And you guys are part, I think he's part of like a 20-team league, I think. And just to have fun and come up with some crazy ideas and put in players and replacing himself too, which is kind of funny too.
So Austin, like you said, he's an active player, so he's often working his off day. Most all players have their off day on Tuesdays. So we usually record on Tuesdays in the morning. On Monday nights, we have a production meeting at nighttime after he's done practice and stuff. So we'll have a production meeting, and we've had some incredible guests. We had Rainn Wilson, who's best known as Dwight Schrute from The Office.
Oh, wow.
And that he was a guest on the show because so I am in a fantasy league with Rainn Wilson and a couple of other LA-based actor comedy people. Joel McHale. I co-manage a team with Joel McHale, who was on like Community and not Community. I forget what it's called. I'm blanking. He was on The Soup. You'll know him. Anyway, so it was an auction league, and we were both bidding on players, and I got outbid for, like, I was bidding on Austin, and Rainn Wilson like outbid me by a lot. Like, I was like, okay, I have a budget. I'll pay as much for Austin as the market has set for Ezekiel Elliott.
Right.
And then I didn't have any more money, so I couldn't go above. And I think that Rainn bid like $56 on Austin, and I was like willing to go up to 52 or 53.
Wow.
And so I was like, hey, I'm doing a show with him, and Rainn is like a giant Austin Ekeler fan, so he was like, can I come on your show? And I was like, yes, you can come on my show. So Rainn Wilson came on. We'll have Joel McHale on in a couple. I think he's in Georgia working on a movie right now, so he's going to come on like probably November or December. We had Travis Kelce on the show. We had Sterling Shepard on the show. We had my buddy James Roday from Psych on the show. We have I don't want to say who, we have a big guest coming on next week. So it's just been awesome. Like, we usually start the show talking about Austin's performance. He's really transparent. In this week's episode, I was like, listen, Austin, we got obviously the Chargers did not have the best outing at Baltimore against the Ravens. These were 2 4-1 teams in a hotly contested contest. And the Chargers got smashed, and it's a little bit awkward for me to be like, so buddy, we got a lot of tweets about, why you weren't on the field very much. And Austin was like, my ankle, like my ankle's been bad. It's been tweaked. I'm not worried about it because I'm on bye now. So I just want viewers to understand like how incredibly special that is. Like, most players are so protective of their injuries, of any, not even injuries, but like tweaks. They don't talk about it. Like, they hide everything. And the amount of insight, I mean, the name of the show is Ekeler's Edge, because you are getting an absolute edge and behind the scenes insight that regular people have never gotten before. Like, it didn't exist before this show. And I think it's just incredible. He is so awesome and all about connecting with community and so sincere. And I think that comes through, and between my analysis and his inside experience, I'm really proud of like the advice we're giving and the content we're creating.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like you said, by having this show, it feels like both of you guys share more out of it on the show. And the time I had Austin Ekeler on my show was the time that he was coming off the other injury from last year. So he shared
the hamstring.
Yeah, the hamstring. He shared a lot from that on the show, and it's just amazing, like what they talk about, and and they share a lot more on platforms like these. It's just amazing. So
yeah. And I've interviewed plenty of athletes, and I've spoken to plenty of athletes, and I've heard plenty of them say like, yeah, that's off the record, or like, I've not been able to share information because they've asked me not to, and so I've not. And so it's been like pleasantly tilting for us to be like, yeah, my ankle. And I was like, are you even in that episode, I stopped. I was like, can we stop recording? Are you sure you want to say that? Are you sure you want to put that on tape? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, all right,
Yeah, so let's get to this season and the fantasy football so far. And what are your thoughts on this season overall, and any surprises too? I'm a big Dallas Cowboy fan. We're 5-1, and obviously some injuries on the team. But what are your overall thoughts on the season so far?
I mean, honestly, as you were saying, surprises, Dallas was the first team that popped into my head. I think surprising for fantasy that they haven't been as prolific as we had hoped, because we were really anticipating the defense to be much worse, especially once Demarcus Lawrence was injured, I really expected that defense to fall apart without their glue guy, if you will. And it already looked like a bad squad because of the cap issues they had heading into the season. And so we were expecting like the Kellen Moore fireworks show that we saw at the top of 2020 over the first 4+ weeks, right? Until Dak got hurt. And instead, this has been an incredibly balanced team. You're seeing Tony Pollard pop, right? You're seeing Zeke work a bunch because he got paid and because he's talented, but also like he's eating, but he's not gorging himself. Tony Pollard's been an absolute delight. You're not seeing as much production, save last week, out of CeeDee Lamb. And I have to, but every week, that Dak has the kind of talent that if a game were to get out of hand, then you have to have Amari Cooper in your lineup. You have to have Dalton Schultz, who has like more catches right now than CeeDee Lamb on the season anyway. So I think in terms of a surprise, that's been the surprise. It's not been maybe pleasant for fantasy fans because we haven't gotten as many points as we thought we'd be able to mine from the offense. But I still think it's awesome to see Dak back. And listen, I am married to a Washington football teamer, and even I'm excited about the Dallas Cowboys.
You're Washington football fan?
No, my husband is a Washington football team fan. So like I have been forbidden from rooting for the Dallas Cowboys. Even he though is like, man, I really do like that Dak,
Yeah, so I'm just happy that we have the bye week because Dax has a calf strain right now. Are you guys concerned with Dak's calf strain long term, or do you think he will be ready for the following week?
I mean, he played through the shoulder issue. He did not seem to have any regression from the ankle issue. And I really thought I write a series for Yahoo every offseason called Rest versus Rust. And I do it in combination with an orthopedic surgeon and the team doctor at the University of Southern California. And we talk about these injuries and what we can expect, like from his medical perspective, what is the diagnosis? And I really thought that Dak, especially the matchups against Tampa Bay, and the Chargers that he had at the top of the season, like he would need a minute to shake off some rust and kind of get used to players grabbing at his ankles again. I mean, I know that you saw the Thursday night game in week 1. There was no flinching. He was like the opposite of Carson Wentz, like definitely not afraid of getting hit, took it, didn't have any anticipation, was still there, didn't have any hiccups in his processing. And so I'm not worried about the calf strain because he's shown me that he can just stay focused and work through pain, and he's got the bye to get healthy.
Yeah, so actually, you know what? If you think about it, we could have been 6-0 right now heading into the bye week because we were this close to beating Tampa Bay week 1, but it obviously didn't happen. But I want to ask you, so now getting to fantasy, obviously I want to get to the Zach Ertz situation where he got traded. When he had a touchdown that game, and then the next day he gets traded to Arizona. And whoever has Zach Ertz on their team, do you think they should be concerned with all the weapons Arizona has, or do you think he can get more production with Kyle Murray in there?
I think that is a great question. I think that the Arizona offense, the undefeated Cardinals, how they were, by the way, not favorited last week against the Browns. Like they were 3.5-point underdogs heading into week 6, which is bananas. I understand like the COVID situation probably added to that and the potential 21-mile-per-hour winds expected in Cleveland. But like they proved that they are a complete squad, and they get Chandler Jones back this week too. So here's the thing about Arizona. They are fully loaded. They know what they're doing. It's similar to Dallas in that you want a piece of it, or it's similar to Tampa Bay in that like you want a piece of it. You know that Kyler, like every week save one, AJ Green has seen 6 targets. Yeah. All right. Again, every week since except one. I believe it was week 5 that he didn't see his requisite 6 targets. Well, that to me, I'm like, okay, like we're deep enough into the season where I'm like, well, that's the floor for AJ Green. Well, that's a hell of a floor with that offense. Yes, I'll take it. We know that Max Williams had been getting a lot of red zone looks. So we're anticipating, right, that Zach Ertz will see some of those. So if I am dealing with a position as volatile as tight end and we have buys happening and injuries mounting, then I want to attach myself to the most prolific, efficient offense that I know will pass a lot. I can, and that is the Arizona Cardinals or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, I mean, when you're looking at Zach Ertz and you're like, oh, well, I mean, what are you hoping for when you get a tight end anyway? What are you hoping for? Like if you get 4 catches and 50 yards, you're thrilled out of a tight end. If you get 5 catches and 60 yards, you're in the top 10. So do I think that Zach Ertz has a shot at 4 catches every week? Yeah, I do. And do I think that he has a shot at like a touchdown? I don't know, every other week, every third week? I do. So odds are going to lean in his favor. And I think he's probably always going to be ranked as a low end tight end 1 because of the offense he's attached to.
Interesting. Yeah. So now let's get to some of these starts and sit-ems for this week. But I wanna tell you about my team real quick because my bench either has a bye week or on IR. But my starting is Aaron Rodgers, Tyler Boyd, AJ Green, Felton from yesterday, McKissick. I got Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow. But I'm 1-5. I'm projected to lose this week again too. So I don't know if who I should replace or sit or look into the waiver wire because my bench is like either bye week or IR right now. So
yeah, this week is tough. I will say it's great that you have JD McKissick. Antonio Gibson has been dealing with a stress fracture in his shin, and it's gotten so bad. He's been playing through it since the top of October. But last week it got so bad that he had to be in and out of the game. I don't know. He was at practice on Thursday. So it'll be interesting to see the practice reports. But even if he suits up, I'm worried about him playing. And you saw JD McKissick have his highest snap total of the season in week 6 in replacement of Gibson. And we also know that McKissick is a former college receiver. So he makes most of his money through the air. The Green Bay Packers, you're going to have to throw against, right? There should be a good amount of points and a good amount of passing for the Washington football team because they're going to be chasing Aaron Rodgers in a point deficit. And also, their run defense, the Packers, is not particularly good. I think they're giving up 4.6 or 4.7 yards per carry to opposing rushers, which means that McKissick can get it done on the ground or through the air. So that is an awesome flex play. He's also a great value in Yahoo DFS. I believe he's around $13 in our daily game. So I would feel very good about flexing him, and I would bet that your projection for the week is not accounting for Gibson's potential absence, and that's why you are at least partially projected to lose.
Okay, all right, sounds good. So I'll keep him in there. So who are you guys? Some of your stardom and sit-ems for this week outside of that?
McKissick, I really like. So I think Tua Tagovailoa, you've got a lot of quarterbacks stacked, like we talked about. Justin Herbert on bye, Josh Allen on bye. So a lot of people are looking for quarterbacks. Carson Wentz has proven to have a pretty steady floor. He's getting, I believe there hasn't been a game all season except one where he's gotten under 17 fantasy points. So again, the ceiling is not too great. He plays San Francisco this week. I'm hoping that with a week on bye, Kyle Shanahan has had some time to like open up the playbook so we can get the over on the Indianapolis at San Francisco game. We'll have Jimmy G under center instead of Trey Lance, but I think that Carson Wentz is proving healthier. We like his, Paris Campbell is still healthy, and that's helping to stretch the field. Michael Pittman is proving to be a true number 1 alpha. T.Y. Hilton, unlikely to play this week, but I still think Carson Wentz can get it done. So that's a nice floor play. And Tua Tagovailoa, there are a lot of rumors swirling about Deshaun Watson potentially going before the end of the week to Miami. But even if those are just if it's true, it's got to happen tomorrow. Is Watson really going to be under center tomorrow? That seems a little bit wild. And even the hint of those rumors, I think, would help motivate Tua, who's coming off of a game in London, which was his first return from the rib injury. He completed 70% of his passes, threw for over 300 yards, only had 1 interception. And the matchup against Atlanta is great. Atlanta, I believe, is giving up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. They've only forced 1 interception so far on the season, and they have 9 sacks. So we saw last week that Tua could beat up a bad defense, and Atlanta is another bad defense. So I think those are 2 quarterback plays that are widely available if people are looking to stream at the position with so many teams on bye.
Yeah, so speaking of quarterbacks, obviously I'm going to go down your hometown, Chicago, real quick because a lot of quarterbacks, like you said, they're on bye week. So I'm just going to bring up this interesting question. Whoever has Justin Fields, would you take the risk of starting him this week against Tampa? Because I would. Because with all the quarterbacks that are not there on bye week and some of the options are limited in the waiver wire. So would you take the risk by starting Justin Fields this week or no?
No, and here's why. I understand the reasoning, but the only way to beat Tampa Bay is through the air. And Bill Lazor is not putting the ball in the air. Last week when Justin Fields played the Green Bay Packers, now we just talked about how we're expecting the Washington football team to pass in order to keep up with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. I believe the Washington football team is like 8-point underdogs, right? The Bears had a similar line. I think they were 5-point underdogs heading into last week. Justin Fields recorded 27 pass attempts. WTF? Are you kidding me? You have got to put the ball in the air if you are going to beat Tom Brady and the Bucs, whose biggest weakness is obviously their secondary and the amount of injuries that they've sustained. You cannot beat the Bucs on the ground. That is what they do best. And you're never going to keep pace with Brady. So you have to like at least clear 35 pass attempts if you're going to keep up. And I just have not seen anywhere throughout the season any sort of willingness to let Justin Fields air it out. I don't know if it's because Allen Robinson is clearly not healthy. That ankle injury is more than just a tweak. If there's not enough confidence in Darnell Mooney, which I don't understand, or Khalil Herbert looked good last week. He's still going to struggle. Like the matchup is not great, but he's still like a top 15 option this week because of the volume that we're expecting him to get, even if he just runs into a bunch of brick walls a bunch of times.
So I want to ask you about running back, wide receiver, tight end, and defense real quick. We're going to roll through this. So any surprises that for the running back position and wide receiver, tight end, and defense, or
what do you mean, like sleeper plays?
Yeah, sleeper plays.
Well, I already talked about J.D. McKissick, and we talked about Dearness Johnson. So I think those were two surprises. Keep an eye on Jarrett Patterson, who would be the early downs option in Washington if Gibson was a scratch. Darrell Williams is going to continue to be a play for Kansas City. He found the goal line twice, but wasn't particularly efficient without CEH in the lineup. A.J. Dillon, if we're talking about Green Bay, A.J. Dillon has been in a pretty close to, I don't know. It's not a 50-50 timeshare like Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon in Denver, but A.J. Dillon continues to get run. And I think that Green Bay could be up enough that there could be some clock eating opportunities for A.J. Dillon while they keep Aaron Jones healthy and fresh. So that's another play.
How about wide receiver and tight end?
A wide receiver is a little bit stanky this week. I think the one I'm most excited about is Rashad Bateman, the rookie out of Minnesota. He made his debut for the Ravens last week against the Chargers. He managed the second highest number of snaps among the wide receivers, just behind Hollywood Brown. He drew 6 targets, converted 4 of those for, I think, just under 30 yards. So not a lot of production, but they didn't really need to throw the ball against the Chargers because they were winning so handily. And I think that could change this week, especially because Sammy Watkins is dealing with a hamstring injury. So I think Bateman is going to be in full action. And that's a rookie that a lot of people were very excited about.
So so obviously the trade deadline is coming up soon. Do you guys see any major trades happening this trade deadline or no?
I mean, I would be surprised if I am, without being more clear about Trey Lance's knee issue. I feel like this is the boldest prediction that I can come up with. Well, there are two. I think Marlon Mack is going somebody, right? Like somewhere. Everybody is speculating on Marlon Mack. He's been very vocal about the fact that he wants out of Indianapolis. He believes he's a starter and he's never going to get that opportunity behind Jonathan Taylor. So would it surprise me if he went to the Chiefs? No, but I think the Chiefs have a lot of defensive needs. So if they're going to make any trades, it would be weird that they not prioritize their defense. But I think Marlon Mack will probably end somewhere. Jimmy G to the Seahawks is the one that I am the most intrigued by.
Wow. Okay.
I know it's there's a lot that probably everyone's like, no. Like they're both in the NFC West and that's never going to work. But like, I feel like Kyle Shanahan wants to unload him. He knows that he is not the quarterback of the future. I don't think that I think Kyle Shanahan is over. When you have that ex and like you keep them on speed dial for like late nights, but really you're super over them. Kyle Shanahan, I think, has big feelings about the fact that Jimmy G lost him a Super Bowl in a super friendly scheme. And he wants Trey Lance to be the starter. And obviously the Seahawks have a need with Russell Wilson out. And I don't think the Seahawks believe that their Super Bowl window is going to close. Like they believe they're in a Super Bowl window. So how much confidence do they have in Geno Smith, who outside of last week hadn't started a game since 2017?
Yeah, if that happens, if Jimmy G goes to the Seahawks, I'm going to reach out to you. I'm going to give you a big shout out Liz.
I know it's unlikely, but that's like my boldest trade prediction.
That's a hot take right there. That's a hot take. So let's see if that happens. So, real quick before we get to the last two things, I just want to ask you about your hometown city, Chicago, and obviously a great city to play in. Best for pizza. The Chicago style pizzas are amazing there. So, what do you like about the growth of their sports? You got Chicago Bulls, Chicago Blackhawks, Chicago Cubs, Chicago Bears. If you talk about the Bulls, the season's obviously just started, and now you have a big three there. Hopefully they can do big things there. So, but what are your overall thoughts on the city of Chicago now with the sports?
I mean, I love the city of Chicago, and you are missing a giant. What about the WNBA championship, Chicago Sky?
Hey, congrats by the way, sorry about that. Sorry, congrats to the Chicago Sky winning the championship. And Candace Parker coming back.
Hometown legend, went to Naperville. Like Candace Parker at home, winning the WNBA championship for the Shy Sky. Like that, I am sky high excited about it. Like absolutely in love with Chicago, absolutely in love with what that squad did for the city. They needed a basketball win because let's be honest, the Bulls have been not so great for a minute. The Bears suck right now too. The Cubs have had their moment, but they just had a fire sale. When Anthony Rizzo is like playing for the Yankees, my heart crumbles into a million pieces. Are you kidding me? I gotta be a Dodgers fan now that I live in LA because they're playing baseball in October. Cubs certainly are. So yeah, but the city is great. If you're looking for Chicago style pizza, which I will go to the grave saying is better than any of that thin crust New York garbage. There's another hot take. I'm sure I'll get some hate tweets about that. Pequod's. My favorite deep dish pizza in the city of Chicago is Pequod's. Pequod''S. Pequod's is the best pizza. And Portillo's, if you're into Italian beef, you got to put the giardiniera on top of it, and the cheese fries in that city are better. In LA, when you order cheese fries, I understand that this is probably a basic take. They put actual shredded cheese. No, cheese fries are for dipping in the cheese. You need that cheese sauce. Yep. You need cheese stuff. Yep. You don't need cheese. You need cheese stuff fries that are absolute. I gain 5 pounds every time I go home.
I can't believe I forgot the Chicago Sky. That's my fault. And congrats to them winning. I had the head coach on the show, James Wade, on the show, and it was
awesome.
It was really an honor talking to him, and congrats to him, and especially Candace Parker. Does this remind you of when LeBron came back home to Cleveland, winning the championship?
Yeah. Yes, it feels very, very similar. Like having her daughter there, and also, I mean, I appreciate it because she went to she grew up in Chicago. She went to LA. And did a lot of great work with the Sparks and then got to go home. And like, it would be so meaningful to me if like I grew up there, moved to LA, had a great career. And like, if I could, like, I would say my biggest dream, my biggest number one on my bucket list would be to throw in the first pitch at a Chicago Cubs game. Like if I could do that, like, I'm going to put that out in the universe on your show right now. I've never said it out loud.
Put that. I'm going to make sure that happens. I'm going to tweet. I'm going to help you make that happen. How about that?
All right, let's make it happen. I am manifesting that I am throwing out the first pitch at Wrigley Field for a Cubs game at some point in my life. Like hopefully while I can still throw.
And also you and Austin Ekeler need to get Candace Parker on your show.
Oh my God, that is a brilliant idea. Yes. I'm going to reach out to our booker and our producer right now. That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, so the last two things here, our team is part of this foundation. It's called the Hugh Jackson Foundation. He's a former NFL coach. He's now the offensive coordinator at Tennessee State with Eddie George. And actually today's coach's birthday, so happy birthday, Hugh Jackson. And we're trying to help him prevent human trafficking, making sure the community stays safe and the kids stay safe. So we'll send you the foundation so you can go check it out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And everybody loves Hugh Jackson.
Yep. And
he is a gift making machine. He's gift inspo for sure.
I am surprised he still hasn't got another chance at the NFL. That's so crazy. Yeah, but the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and all the essential workers right now?
Absolutely. My best friend from Chicago is a nurse, and she was out here on a travel nursing contract in Los Angeles with me and was the charge. She worked throughout the COVID crisis on COVID units and saw a lot of stuff that none of us ever want to see. And she was a frontline, and she also was a charge nurse at a massive vaccine site here in Los Angeles, and was part of that amazing effort. She has helped keep me and my family safe, and I am incredibly indebted to her, all of the doctors, all of the frontline workers who continuously sacrifice of themselves so that we can stay safe. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to shout them out.
Yeah, well said. There it is. That wraps up episode 925 with the talented, inspiring Yahoo Sports fantasy sports guru Lisa Loza, a former actress. I just want to say thank you for joining the show today. It's truly an honor. And go check her out. Go follow her on all social media formats. She does a show with current Chargers running back Austin Ekeler called the Ekeler's Edge. Go check out that show. And if you need help with fantasy, this is your lady right here. So keep up the great work, Liz. And we would like to have you back on the show at some point down the line so you can meet the full team. But keep up the great work. You're such an inspiration. And thank you again. This has been an honor.
Thank you. It was wonderful being with you.
Anytime.